Hello and welcome to the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast with me, Karen Maloney. I am your host, and the intention of this podcast is to help us open our minds, get curious about ourselves, and to raise our vibration and consciousness levels. Through these conversations, we hope that you will go on an inward journey to discover the truth of who you are and to become aware of your own energy and vibration. We have the power to consciously create our lives, but we need to wake up to this fact before we can begin the process and learn the key of self-responsibility. Check out the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Acast, Castbox, or whatever platform you listen on, and please like, subscribe, and share the podcast. Leave a review, leave a rating, as this will help it to reach more people. Check out my website as well, Soul Power Light, www.soulpowerlight.com. Hello everybody. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in for another week. We are in March. Can you believe it? Ooh, the year is flying, but I have another incredible conversation again this week to help you on your journey of curiosity and consciousness. And my guest this week is Chess Edwards. And Chess is a Sedona-based spiritual guide and meditation teacher whose guidance invites us to explore the art of meditative self-inquiry and self-realization. This contemplative exploration, born of deep stillness and presence, awakens our most authentic, powerful, and essential nature so that we may quiet our minds, open our hearts, and know the true inner peace that allows us to fully celebrate the adventure of our lives. With over 40 years' experience guiding people into stronger, deeper, and more vibrant relationships with themselves, their work, and the world they live in, Chess Edwards is dedicated to helping his clients and students step powerfully into their full potential as they learn to trust and embody their innate perfection and brilliance. This again was another super interesting conversation and a really brilliant one, I think, for anyone who may struggle to see themselves beyond just the material world or beyond their thoughts or beliefs or that mental story or physical possessions. I think Chess in this conversation really helps to distinguish the human ego identity part of ourselves, which we need to have for this life, and the eternal essence and formlessness and imperishable aspect of ourselves, as he calls it. And I think he explains it in a really simple, breaks it down, easy to understand way. And during the conversation as well, he invites us to think of a question which is really, really powerful that will really help you to see beyond some of the stories and the beliefs and who you are outside of the mind chatter. So super interesting. He also mentioned as well how in his own personal journey was really when he added in the spiritual development aspect into his work that really made huge shifts, and not just the personal development as well. And when he said that, it really just exploded in my mind as well, that yes, it was when I added in the spiritual aspect of things into my own journey as well that really made the greatest difference. So I think it's an absolutely fantastic conversation. Lots of nuggets in it for you to take. And Chess has also kindly offered a guided meditations collection for any listeners of the show as well. So you can go to my website, soulpowerlight.com, and click the podcast section for all the links to Chess's work and to receive that free guided meditation collection. And you can also check out more on Chess's work in his website, which is chessedwards.com, and there is loads of super information there as well. And just before we get into the episode, I just want to share that in my own personal work, I have a couple of coaching slots available for anyone who may be looking for some one-to-one support in making shifts within themselves, internally, with the relationship with themselves. I'll have a couple of slots opening up towards the end of March. So reach out, send me an email, karen@soulpowerlight.com. We can have a quick chat and see if I will be able to support you. So without further ado, enjoy today's conversation. Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining and tuning in for another episode. I have the wonderful Chess Edwards joining me today, and Chess, I'm already really excited to talk to you. From the times we've connected before, we've really had a vibe and a flow, so I'm looking forward to today's flow and seeing what does flow. But first of all, you're very welcome.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm just always so thrilled to have these conversations with people who are, so courageously and creatively looking into the dynamics of this life that we're all living.
Oh, yes. That definitely excites me, and I love how you are, those words, even a self-realization guide. I love self-realization, and you're a spiritual guide, but maybe why don't you explain a little bit about your work, first of all?
Sure. My work is primarily just helping people to know the truth of themselves, to help people to recognize, to come into an embodied knowing that is beyond a mental knowing, but a real felt presence of their divine nature, their wholeness, their vastness, the essence of themselves, that it transcends the mind-body experience. So, and so that they can take that wholeness of themselves and have it come into a beautiful, harmonious relationship with the egoic identity. So that we can be this lovely, complicated, often confused human that can feel everything, that can feel everything, the grief, the love, the loss, the pain, the happiness, the full dimensionality of what it is to be a human is so much more graceful when we know our imperishable nature as well. So my work is really to help people come into that beautiful balance.
Amazing. I love that full dimensionality. I can hardly even pronounce the word.
It took me a while too when I first landed on that one.
That's a really good one. And, the simplicity is knowing the truth of who we are. But I know for a lot of people as well, it's like, well, what does that mean? I know who I am. I'm part of this physical world. I have this role and I do this and I earn this. And, it's all about the physical material. And you mentioned the word, the kind of ego identity. Yeah. And then often beyond that, people may think, well, anything beyond that is not real. It's crazy. It's made up. Like there is nothing more to me. But maybe how can you help explain more about that ego identity, and then, like you mentioned, the truth or who we are beyond that as well, like you're saying, transcending that aspect?
Well, it's so interesting because you're right. A lot of times it's like, well, then this other thing you're talking about, it's formless. It's so it can't really be real. It must be made up. Yeah. And it's upside down. That's flipped.
Yeah.
One of the best ways I've found to feel into this is if we start to feel into a sense of two selves. The self that we typically believe we are, that's the egoic identity, is who we believe we are. And our true identity is who we really are. This thing that we believe we are is largely a construct of our own mind. And I know, for a lot of people, that's just words. So I often come into this question of who are we, and are we just a mind-body experience? With the question of before we came into this current mind-body experience, so I'm 59 now. So 59, 60 years ago, before I came into this mind-body journey, did I exist? And when I ask that of folks, there's typically a pause. Most people have not considered that. And there's a wrestling around with, well, I think I probably did, but I don't have any recollection of past lives. Yeah. And I don't either. I don't have any recollection of past lives. But there's a knowing, there's a feeling of there's more to me than this mind body. So I often flip it around and say, all right, if we end our session and you walk out the front door and a strong wind blows a tree branch down and smacks you dead, and this story of you stops, your mind stops, will you still exist? And often people, when they feel into that, they really get a sense of, well, wait, I'm going to continue. It's like, all right, so there was an essence to you before you came into this current mind-body experience. And it's like, okay. So we're starting to look at this. There's an essence of ourselves that is beyond the self that we've thought into being. Then we can look at how that happened. And when we were toddlers, babies start to come into a sense of knowing themselves. There's a sense of self. You'll see them staring at their hands and looking at their body. And it's like inside their little mind, there's this thing going, whoa, hold on. What's this thing I'm looking at? Like, this wasn't here yesterday. And they're starting to get a sense of me. And then they get a sense of, oh, there's separation. There's a mom and a dad and a dog and a me. And we know that we need an identity. Can't go through life without an identity. Yeah. I got to have a sense of self. So the mind asks, who am I? And the toddler doesn't have access to that absolute truth of being. Oh, I am an individuated expression of the one consciousness. Moving through a particular soul configuration so that the one can know itself and its infinite potentiality. And this person is a vehicle. A person is a vehicle for consciousness that is moving through a filter, if you will, a coloring of a soul. It doesn't know that, so it still has a question, who am I? And in the absence of the truth, the only option it has is to make a self up. And this is what people typically start to really get. The recognition that, oh, wait a minute, yeah, I made up who am I based on, well, what was my experience with mom and dad? You know, mom was always away at work. She was never home. And the young mind creates a story of, I must be unworthy of love. You know, or dad tells me, I'll love you only when you're performing really well, only when you're a success at things. Maybe that's part of the story. We get a story of self from school, from media, from culture, from all of that, and we construct a self that is constructed of our thoughts and our beliefs. That is the self that most everyone is identified with. And that is the self that's made up. Yeah. That is the self that is dreamed into being because it's constantly changing.
I love that. And thank you for giving that, breaking it down and making it a bit clearer for people as well. And it's true, it's what I say in my work as well is we learn who we are and how we need to be and who we need to be in the world in order to not feel separated or be rejected or outcasted. And that sense of constantly feeling like we need to mold and edit and censor ourselves, like you say, to receive that love or to get the recognition or to feel validated in different things. And then what would you say is the key for people? Because a lot of people as well aren't conscious of that.
No, just so that the analogy of a dream is so apt here. So a dream is made up. Our mind is just making stuff up at night and we're dreaming of, let's say, we're being chased by a tiger. When we're in the dream, we have no cognition. We have no knowing of the head that is laying on the pillow dreaming. All there is the dream. So when we say we're asleep in a dream of self, it means we are so consumed with the image, with the idea of self, the story of self that the mind is constantly churning out, that it is veiling, it is covering, it is obscuring the knowing of the true self that is beyond the dream. So that knowing of self, it helps to know that we're basically consumed by a dream of self that is happening in the mind, and that is veiling the absolute wholeness and love that we already are. Everything we're seeking, we already are. We're just collapsed into a constructed image of self that is playing itself out in our mind.
Oh yeah, so true. I'm just like having flashbacks of my own insights and learnings as well. And I suppose, what is the key or what is the path for people to... Well, it is a type awakening, but this is not stuff we're taught in school or mainstream like that. We're taught to construct ourselves, and those beliefs and thoughts from these systems. And that's why I say we always have limitations and beliefs because they're been fed from something outside of ourselves. So what is the path, or how do people begin to connect with this?
It's a great question. And I think the answer might sound a little bit odd, but what I have found over years and years of working with thousands of people, that one of the critical components is we have to get very, 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 very clear on who we are not. We have to get so clear on the illusion of self, on what's going on, that we are believing we are whatever our mind is telling us we are, and that we believe that. We have to get so clear about that so it's easier to get some distance from it and to stop being so ruled by it. I often relate it to being in a dysfunctional relationship. If you're in a dysfunctional relationship, you kind of stay in the relationship because you keep believing the things that the other person says. No, I'll be good. No, I'll behave. I know I was saying really cruel things to you yesterday, but I'll be better and I'll stop saying those kinds of things to you. So we have to recognize that the story of ourselves is constantly in flux, and it really can't be depended on. If we're just making up a better story of ourselves, that is not going to be stable. It's still going to be changing. So we have to get such a clarity that when we hear the habitual story, the habitual voice in our head telling me I'm worthy or I'm unworthy or I'm lovable or I'm unlovable or I'm safe, I'm not safe, all these different storylines that go on about me, I have to get really clear that that's just the mind making stuff up. So the first step is getting very, very, very clear on who we're not. And then the question arises quite naturally, well, then if that's not who I am, what the heck? Who am I? And that's when we can really start a journey of learning from guides and from teachers how to look, how to feel beyond this mind of self, this dream of self, into a knowing of our larger essence. And it takes patience, that's key. It takes devotion, that is key. It takes study, and that is key. And to recognize that it's going to take, typically for most people, a good 5 to 10 years of practice and of devotion and of meditation to feel into the awakened, imperishable grace of what we really are. Because we've been in the dream for a long time, you know? Yeah.
Totally. And I love that, thinking on it and getting clear of who we are not. And I suppose that is the crucial piece. And, for me, it kind of starts with that curiosity as well and allowing yourself to explore, because again, that feels so certain and rigid and fixed and totally why would you even question? And I know for me, it really came through a traumatic event where I lost everything that I thought I was. I mean, my sense of self, my possessions, materials, everything. That then I was left feeling really exposed and vulnerable and going, what the hell? Now I'm nobody because I don't have anything that defines who I am. But in that space, a really interesting thing started to happen where I was actually, hang on a second. Who I am has nothing to do with these externals and the identities I've built and the possessions I own. There's actually something else going on. So for me, it really started through a traumatic event. The idea is that people don't have to get to that or be through something hugely traumatic either to have them hurled into this curious space. So is there, or how do you help people who are in that space like I was, but how or what do you share with people to help them to make the conscious connection or start to debunk these beliefs and thoughts and stories that they tell themselves before maybe a really traumatic experience happens?
Oftentimes, it doesn't, like you say, it doesn't have to be a singular traumatic event. But when one starts to recognize that so much in their lives is unstable and is being dictated by their roller coaster of emotions, their roller coaster of defending themselves and projecting themselves into the world and needing to be validated. They start to recognize the unhealthy nature of many of their relationships. So it doesn't have to be so traumatic, but usually in this work, just starting to talk about the fact that I ask people, what do they want? And oftentimes they really end up coming to a place of saying, I just want to be me. I just want to feel at peace. I just want to feel like I can move through this world without so much drama. And then I ask, what's getting in the way? And pretty quickly they get it. They go, my mind.
Mm-hmm.
My mind's in the way. It's like, okay, and you are more than your mind. So once they really get, and I work with them on models and a lot of different processes of helping them get clear for that, oh my God moment of going, oh my God, this thing I call me is nothing but thoughts and beliefs, and I'm letting that rule my life. This is crazy. Yeah. So then the next step is to help them feel into an essence of themselves. And the technique that I use are meditations of deep self-inquiry. Mm. And the self-inquiry is asking within a moment of stillness, a bit of a meditative state, inquiring, playing with the thought, wait a minute, if I didn't have this story of me, if I just didn't even have a history, if I didn't have a past, if I didn't have all these things that I've taken together and cobbled together a story of me, if that was relaxed even for just 10 seconds, would I disappear? And apparently I would still exist. And then to start to feel into what is that? What does it feel like just to be when I'm not thinking myself into being? And there's different meditative techniques of inquiry to feel into this idea of going, wait a minute. If I stop the stories, I don't disappear. There's a purity, a wholeness of me. And then that'll always start to, and then the question is always, what does that feel like? Not to name it so much or to have a dialogue about it, but just to feel into that. And typically the experience is, oh my God, it feels liberating. It feels like there's a peace there. And they start to get, oh, wait a minute, that's always there. That's always there. As soon as I stop thinking my disempowering thoughts, what is always there is peace and love. And I call it grace. Mm. And it's always there. And one of the easiest physical analogies is to bring your awareness in this just normal moment, bring your awareness to your left foot. And people do, and they go, okay. I go, all right, you got it? And they're like, yeah, I'm totally aware of my left foot. Did you just grow a left foot? No, it's always been there. Exactly. It's just that you're not trained in pointing your awareness to it. Mm. And yet as simply as that, you just learn how to point your awareness to something that is already there, and boop, it just pops into awareness.
Well, like that, our focus is our power. That's what I always say as well. And again, we're not trained to direct it. We're not trained to even be conscious of it or aware that we actually can control it. And that comes back to the mind piece that you mentioned. You know, it is our mind that gets in the way. And like that, we don't have to get caught into the stories and the thoughts and the ideas that our mind tells us. But that's the crux of, you know, that's the shift to, because our mind is a really powerful tool. Like, it's incredible. But again, when we learn to become the conscious drivers of it, as opposed to being the poor beggar at the end of the story, you know, being tossed around by life and on that roller coaster. And I know before, like mentioned, we don't learn this in mainstream society. So for anyone who may be feeling like really caught in that roller coaster, just disconnected, confused, maybe overwhelmed, what would you kind of suggest to them? Tools, and I know it's very individual, but tools or steps or resources that might be able, you know, lead them to something that can support them?
Well, they absolutely need to find guides. They need to study to a degree. Their curiosity needs to guide them to studying a new way of seeing, a new way of feeling, a new way of being. So going on retreats that are specifically geared toward awakening the self-realization, retreats that are specifically geared toward helping people realize the true self. They can simply go to YouTube and find the teachers. They can find my videos. They can find the videos of Rupert Spira, Adyashanti, Muji, Gangaji, so many others. But those are some of those are some of my teachers.
Yeah.
And I study. I still study. In the evenings, I take a bath, and I might pop my laptop open and watch my teachers and listen to these dialogues about what is the fabric of our reality.
Yeah.
And then I'll take, so this is a key tool. If one listens to these talks, satsang, these discourses on the nature of reality, and something lands, something's like, ooh, that really spoke to me, and I want to feel into that deeper, to stop the recording and to go and sit and marinate and be with that thought, that idea, that feeling, that concept, and let it drop in from the mind as an idea into the body as an experience. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yes, it's all about, like you say, allowing that experience to happen as well, to feel into it. Because cognitively, yes, we can get it, all and understand it and have a concept in our mind of, yes, yeah, I get that. But living it and experiencing it, and like you mentioned, making it a devotion is a totally different thing. And that's when you really will get the insights. And I know for me, like that, I had read all the books. I was always fascinated, but it didn't mean that I was fully living it and having the experiences. So that's really powerful. And, I love how you mentioned it is that study. And like that, because it's not taught in schools, it really is that self-development. It really is that inner curiosity that's going to lead you, that inner desire to learn more and to find the right teachers or resources or books that can help you, because you can't find it. Well, it is there now with the internet and everything, but it's that self-led kind of personal development. But then also, and I know for me at times, that can become overwhelming as well. And I know there was a time when I was doing it all, and yes, I was having experiences and getting it, but I still felt stuck. So how do we, I suppose, move through that as well?
So you mentioned the personal development, and the personal development is obviously incredibly beneficial and necessary. When I'm working with the me that I've constructed in my mind based on what I learned as a child about my worth or value or lovability, I need to do my work. I need to do my childhood wounding healing. I need to go back and feel into where did I learn these things about myself and kind of dismantle them a bit. And get a little bit more clarity on what was really going on. So that's the personal development, and that's very necessary. But what I'm finding is that when we add the spiritual development to the practice, everything opens up so much wider. Because when I can approach my personal development from the position of my vastness, of my truth, my imperishable nature of loving consciousness, then I don't feel the threat so much of getting myself right or getting myself wrong. I am already in my grace. Being able to then love, truly love, the wounding, the parts of me that want to be heard, that want to be loved, that want to be met. So I liken it to being a truly loving parent holding their arms open in the embrace of pure love. And no matter what the child comes with, they're saying, yeah, I've got you right here. We're not going to necessarily try to fix it right away. We're not going to try to make it go away. What does any wounded child want? They want to be loved, first and foremost. So the spiritual development helps us awaken as love, pure love, truly unconditional love, loving awareness, as Baba Ram Dass would call it. I am loving awareness. If I know myself to be that, I don't deny my wounding. I don't deny the personal development that needs to be done. It's just that I can do that personal development from a position, from a little bit of a distance. I can do that from being pure love, meeting my pain, meeting my wounding, meeting my fears, meeting all of that and loving it so that it can arise and pass and arise and pass.
Yeah, that is such an important point and something, I hadn't really connected before. But yes, adding in that adjunct of the spiritual development along with the personal development. Actually, when you even said that, I was like, oh yeah, that's really what made the difference for me as well. And it comes back to a word that you mentioned earlier as well, and that's the devotion. When I got devotional about, building that and leaning into the faith and the bigger picture and knowing, that piece beyond this ego identity, that's when things started to shift. So that's a really important message as well. And thank you for mentioning that as well, that adding in the spiritual development side of things as well will make huge shifts and I suppose help a lot of people progress beyond just that personal development, that mindset development.
Yeah. Well, that's what changed it all for me as well. When I really devoted myself to knowing the imperishable and eternal truth of myself, and nothing else mattered at that point. It wasn't, I'm devoted to being more peaceful. I'm devoted to being more loving. It was, I'm devoted to knowing the me that is already peaceful and loving, the imperishable divine nature of my being that's not my mind. And that's what really got, when I said, oh my God, this thing I'm listening to that controls me, that tells me to do this or do that, or defend myself this way, or to say that, or to shame or blame. It's just a constructed layering of thoughts. That was crazy. That was crazy. So the devotion was, I am devoted to doing whatever it takes, and for however long it takes, to find the most divine, peaceful, loving nature of my truth. And then meditation, because for me, the only way I could really come into a rested inquiry of feeling into this something that I was, it was veiled and obscured and formless, and I didn't know how to access it. So I devoted myself to the practice of meditation. And the way I speak about that is, it is like initially that first sense of the truth of me showed up as a glimmer, a spark, and it would last for like a half a second, and then it would kind of go. So I do another meditation and another, and it'd be like blowing on a spark. And if you blow on the spark, then every time you blow on it, it grows. The ember grows and grows and grows until it's a full-fledged flame. But if I stop blowing on it, if I stop doing my meditations and feeling into this truth of me, then it diminishes. It fades again, and the dream takes over once again.
Oh, yes. I'm laughing. Yes, so many of those glimpses. And then, nearly I feel like I came crashing down to humanity again. I'm like, what? And you so easily forget. Well, I know for me as well. So that's why, you mentioned it as well. It is the patience. It is the devotion. It is the practice, because then eventually that will grow and grow and grow. And then you can do it with the simple, just a breath of going, oh yes, I'm back connected to this timeless aspect of myself, this peace and love that you mentioned, that is always there. It is always there. That light is always there. No matter how dark your thoughts may be, how dark your life is, that light is always there. But it's for us to connect back with it. And that was part of my learning as well. It's people can show me or tell me or guide me, but it's ultimately I have to do the work to connect and to feel it and know it and cultivate it and harness it within myself. So
there's no truth in the teachings.
Yeah.
No truth in the words. The words and the teachings are only pointing us to our own experience of truth. That's where the truth lies. It's in our own direct experience. That only comes through the devotion and the practice.
And it's so worth it. That's why sometimes you just want to scream at people and be like, oh my God, just do it, because it feels so damn good. But also it comes to that, acceptance. Everyone is on their journey as well, and we can only do our piece. And, because what's in us flows out of us, I believe as well. So by us emanating and just doing it and radiating, it can inspire someone else to stick to the devotion and actually commit and go, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to do this. Yeah. But I'm curious as well, you are an adventurer as well, and I'd love to know from your journey, and I don't even know if this has been your whole life. You've always been this way, or what was your catalyst?
By no means.
Oh, well, maybe share a little bit, and then what was your greatest or most profound experience?
I love the phrase that the first 50 years of childhood are the hardest.
Brilliant.
I most of my life, internally, I was an emotional mess. I only knew oneself. I only knew the dream of me, the me I had constructed in my mind. And that was based on a fair amount of trauma and abandonment and betrayal and abuse. And so I created a me that didn't feel at all safe in the world. That was pretty much constantly anxious to such a degree it was so normalized I didn't even know that there was an issue. And I started to recognize how I regularly did not feel good. I felt like I'd come home from a gathering of dear friends, people who'd known me for 20 years. And I'd come home and I'd be reviewing in my mind, the narration in my mind would be going, did I say anything or do anything this evening that maybe would make people not like me or withdraw their love? And I got really tired of that. Yeah. So just to say that this is, and with this devotion, that self, that constructed self is largely just gone. The waking up from the dream is so complete now that the dream is, it tries to get my attention every once in a while. Yeah. And I just go, oh, that's interesting. It's just, I don't buy it. I don't listen to it. So it's very possible for somebody to come out of a deep, deep, deep sleep in a really crappy dream of self, and to realize their truth and to realize that truth is love. My work as an adventure travel guide for over 20 years was largely an escape. I didn't feel comfortable around people. People scared me. They were for me, they were sources of pain and hurt in my story. So I felt safer wandering through the high, mountains of the Himalayas and, avalanches and snowstorms and stuff like that. That was safer to me than
being around people. Yeah.
Being around people. Exactly. But then one day I really got it. I'd been out there for so long. I was feeling the loneliness. I was feeling the disconnection from community, from people, from family. And I decided that I wanted to come home and learn how to live amongst community. I was exhausted. I didn't want to be out there just constantly being on the road and traveling, because I was all over the world doing my adventure travel trips. And I came home and I realized I was quite bad at at being with people. And that's when I started doing my personal development work, did that for a good number of years. And then once the spiritual development came online, that's when the true freedom I was seeking really started to happen, if you will.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that as well. I didn't realize that, but I can definitely relate to the version of myself that I had created as well. That, like you mentioned, it became so normalized. I didn't even see how anxious and fearful I was as well, moving through life. I was completely oblivious. That's why I'm like, oh my God, we have to go within to see. Like, we're so blind to things. Like, when we see them, we're like, what? Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. How? Like, it's nearly laughable. Yeah. But also, again, thank you for sharing, because again, just to know for anyone, no matter what is happening, it is possible for anyone. But again, it is that the doing the work, the getting to a point. And I know I mentioned the word even before we connect today, that just sometimes it's just total exhaustion with everything, just hitting that point where it's like, okay, no more. I need to change something. And like that realization, nothing changes if nothing changes.
Yeah. Well, when we have a really bad dream at night, oftentimes if the dream gets bad enough, we wake up. And so it's kind of like when our dream of self really gets troubling enough, we start to wake up.
Ooh, I love that.
And we talked about being stuck along the way also before, and that was critical in the journey of recognizing that if I only did the work of learning to be more gracious, or learning to be more forgiving, or learning to be more compassionate, or learning how to accept the different parts of myself, or myself, that learning to do those things is still mostly happening in the mind. So I think that it's easy to get stuck and go, okay, I've learned these practices of learning to be more thoughtful, more thinking, more compassionate thoughts. Or if somebody cuts me off on the road, I got to go through a couple of mental processes to go, gosh darn it, he cut me off. Oh, wait, no, I got to remember, yeah, he might have somewhere to go. I don't know his story, or this has more to do with them than it does about me. So I got to go through these mental processes. But when we actually integrate through our entire state of being, our entire self, this wholeness that we are, it's just present. I don't have to remember to be gracious. Graciousness is the natural state of divine consciousness. I don't have to remember to be compassionate. That is just awakened. That is just the presence of consciousness awake to itself and living awake.
Yeah, I love that. And yes, so true. It's been such a super interesting conversation, and one I've thoroughly enjoyed. And I'd love to know, maybe you alluded to it earlier, but before we finish up, what has been one of your greatest practices or supports or tools that has really maybe helped you in the beginning or still continues to support you on this remembering journey?
Yeah. The most supportive tool is study. To be in a contemplative position in life, to allow my life to be a curiosity and a journey that is constantly having these conversations. In my journaling in the morning, this is the type of thing I'm journaling about. In my studies in the evening, and one doesn't have to be a full-on monk or living in a cave or anything like that, or disrupt the rest of their lives. I've got a full life. I like to dance. I like to play. I like to eat good foods. I love a good glass of wine. I haven't become a renunciate.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I don't have a really wholehearted study of what's really going on, and then sitting in my meditation and feeling into wherever I am in the journey, and allowing that to unfold a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So I think that the answer to the question is, what is the most important thing, or at least for me, is to stay in the study, to stay in the conversation, to keep blowing on that spark, to that ember, till it grows and grows and grows and stays ignited as a full flame. And then the last part of that is to continue to recognize within myself wherever there is remaining resistance or a disconnect. There's a beautiful poem by Rumi that says, your task is not to seek for love. Your task is to seek for and find within you all the barriers you have built against it. So to be willing to look and feel into, oh, I just got triggered. Oh, that's my 10-year-old. That 10-year-old needs some healing, some love. So let me take this awakened knowing now and give it to, share it with my 10-year-old who's present. He's present today, but he's still scared. So if I give him that love and that truth and that knowing of his divinity, then he heals. He stops being so scared. So that's key, to keep doing our work, to integrate our knowing of our truth today with every aspect of ourselves that we call in the past, but it's all present right now.
Yeah, love that. So true. Integration, key, and always been a student. Absolutely, 100%. And even like they say now, I don't know who says it, but I remember reading it before. Like you say, it's not that you need to live a monastic life or anything like that, but the mystics nowadays are among us. They're absolutely among us because that's what we need right now at this time. And I think 2020 has shown the actual instability of all the externals, everything that we thought was so sure and so fixed. So I think it's an invitation for more and more people to do the self-inquiry, to ask the questions, to become aware or connect to that inner part, that inner truth, that timeless part. So we live in a different way going forward. So I have completely and utterly enjoyed the conversation, and please share where people can find more about your work, Chess.
Thank you. And thank you, Karen, for holding this space and for your excitement and your curiosity and your willingness to be vulnerable out there in the world and keep playing in this world of divinity. They can find me, best way is at my website, which is chessedwards.com. And that's where they're going to find some really valuable resources for living a more conscious and peaceful and powerful life. They're going to find opportunities for working with me one-on-one. But probably the most exciting thing that I've got there is the opportunity for people to come and spend 3 days with me. And I'm calling it an immersion retreat, because it's just 3 days immersed in these conversations and learning the meditations that do help guide to the full realization of ourselves. Hikes out on the land here in Sedona, and to be able to work with somebody in real time, so wherever they are in their awakening, in their discovery, can be met, can be loved as we go along. So best way is through my website, chessedwards.com, and to see the different opportunities that there are to continue this work.
Amazing. And like always, I will have direct links from the show notes on my website to your work as well. And I know you have very kindly gifted as well a guided meditations collection as well for listeners. So I will link that as well for people. But like that, you have loads of resources on your website as well. So I just want again, just thank you deeply, humbly from the bottom of my heart. It was such a pleasure. And I love what you're doing, and keep growing on this journey of life.
Oh, it's endless. It is, because it's so vast. It is truly boundless.
Endless.
And we get to play with that. And
totally.
It's such a blessing. So thank you for everything you do to be a champion of love and of consciousness. Thank you, my dear.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you get notified every time a new show is released. Get more information on this week's guest as well on my website, www.soulpowerlight.com.